It is June 26th, 1985. We're located in central Hurricane, Utah. It is 7:30 p.m. and a little girl named Susie Fowler, who has just attended a birthday party in a restaurant, is leaving to play arcade games. The restaurant was unlike any other restaurant. The place was called Freddy Fast Food Pizza, the greatest pizza chain restaurant in the United States in the 80s. Susie plays the arcade game Fruity Maze, and when she's done, she continues to play it over and over again. When the clock strikes 7:45, the unthinkable unfolds. Susie was now in the final stages of completing the arcade game Fruity Maze. Suddenly, an unknown man dressed in a yellow mascot costume appears behind the girl, and behind his back, he holds a knife. The screams of pain echoed through the walls that summer night. The first murder was on the girl Susie. The second was on the 3 other children at one same time. And the last one on the birthday girl herself, Cassidy. The perpetrator lures the children in his yellow mascot costume out of the dining area, down the corridors, and then into a safe room before they all disappear without a trace. The cheerful mood falls flat. The children had disappeared instantly. Shortly after the 5 children disappeared, the first call came into 911 at 8 p.m.
SLCPD?
Yeah, missing kids at Freddy's.
And the calls kept pouring into 911 call center throughout the night.
You're talking to the police.
Missing kids at Freddy's. SLCPD?
Is this Fast Food Entertainment?
Hello?
Strawberry Avenue?
Yes?
There are a few children who have gone missing, and no one seems to find them, and we looked everywhere.
5 children, Strawberry Avenue, missing, and how has the search gone? Where?
There's nothing new, and it's a famous restaurant.
This whole event would raise so many incredible questions. Questions that people would ask themselves for years to come. What exactly happened? Why would anyone want to kill 5 children? And most important of all, who took them? To summarize the sequence of events after the children disappeared, the following took place. At 8:02 p.m. the first police car arrives at the scene. At 8:06 p.m. the police had evacuated all guests from the restaurant. At 8:44 p.m. additional police cars arrives as the situation to search the restaurant worsens. At 8:58 p.m. the news media sends out a flash telegram. Kids vanish at local pizzeria. Bodies not found. At 9:23 p.m. Freddy's co-owner Henry Schmidt arrives at the restaurant. At 11:48 p.m. Utah's radio was cut off and replaced by the voice of reporter Jane Stream, reading the following messages to the public.
Tragedy tonight at a local pizzeria where 5 children who were attending a birthday event suddenly and mysteriously vanished into thin air. Let's head inside for more.
Since this message was broadcasted in the middle of the night, the majority of Americans were completely unaware of what had happened. But now, the hunt for the killer of the missing children had begun. After the incident, the police began to investigate the crime scene. Unfortunately, they didn't find much trace of the perpetrator, but what they did find was the 2 cameras that had filmed the entire ordeal. One of the cameras was recovered on the morning of June 27th, the day after the incident, showing the right side of the diner. It was the camera that had shown Susie's last presence in the restaurant. The second camera was recovered on June 28th, which was facing the opposite direction to the safe room's entrance, the room where the children were lured into. It was the camera that had also captured the sounds of screaming, probably from the children. In addition to the cameras, there were also 2 springlocks that had come loose from the killer's mascot costume. But how and why springlocks? Well, first of all, we need to understand what a Springlock Suit is. A Springlock Suit is a suit that can double as both an animatronic on stage and a suit for performers to wear. The way to make room inside the suit in order for the performer to fit inside is by using a hand crank on the springlocks, which will recoil and compress the animatronic parts around the suit. The 2 springlocks of the mascot suit that were recovered were of the type 6.33 mascot springlock from the manufacturer Schmitz. The exact mascot costume that was used in the murder have not entirely been clear, but the most common costume for this restaurant chain was a springlock costume by the manufacturer Afton Robotics. However, there were also other manufacturers of springlock suits with the same type of lock. For example, Schmitz, Murray's Costume Manor, Fasper, etc. Unfortunately, the springlock was in far too poor condition to determine exactly which suit was used. But despite that, there are some theories as to what suit might have been used, because at the time of the murder there were between 2 and 3 suits of the right type reported stolen, and perhaps the most famous is the Milford suit. The suit, along with 300 springlocks, was purchased legally in Salt Lake City by a private citizen from St. George. The suit was later stolen during a carnival party in 1982. The costume was later used at a Halloween party that same year in Milford, Beaver County, Utah. During the party, a lock came loose. When the lock was analyzed, it revealed that the springlock and also the springlock found in the Freddy's incident were manufactured at the same time and sold in Utah in the late 1970s. The Milford suit was found in 2005 in Sevier Lake, approximately 37 miles from Milford, by 2 private divers, Ben Garrison and Ossie Johnson. The suit, which had been a matter of great interest to the police and had been sought for 20 years, was found in about 3 hours by 2 private divers hired by the press. Unfortunately, the suit was in far too bad of a state to determine if it was this murder suit or not. Another suit of interest to the police was the Smith suit. The same type of suit to the one that was allegedly used in the murder was stolen from the home of filmmaker Arnold Smith in 1979, and the man who stole the suit claims he sold it for $500 at New Retriever Tavern, now known as Cielo de Sur. The suit is still missing. During the investigation, the police had sampled 197 different suits to try to find similarities with the springlocks that were fired during the incident. Unfortunately, it's virtually impossible to tell which suit was used. After police questioned all witnesses who were around the crime scene that night, they obtained a description of the wanted perpetrator. The murder is believed to have been committed by a man between 5 feet 10 inches to 6 feet 4 inches tall. The man is believed to be between 30 and 50 years old. The man had a yellow or gold mascot costume and a knife or no knife behind his back. According to some witnesses, the man was moving smoothly and easily. According to other witnesses, he moved clumsily and limped. Okay, so we have a description of the perpetrator. On July 2nd, 1985, about a week after the murder, the police had produced a composite sketch of the perpetrator. After the composite sketch was published in almost every newspaper in the country, the tips started to flood into the police. The composite sketch gave between 1,000 and 2,000 tips to the police. However, this composite sketch has subsequently become highly criticized. It is actually based on the testimony of a person who was in the back alley of the restaurant, about the other side of the restaurant where the murder took place. According to the witness, it was between 8:10 and 8:20 p.m. when the witness saw the possible perpetrator. Since the murder occurred at 7:45 p.m., this window of time between 8:20 p.m. to 8:20 p.m. is, according to a later police investigation, far too late to be likely. Nowadays, people don't even believe that the composite sketch represents the killer. Anyway, the police had followed a number of different leads over the years to find the person or persons who murdered the children. Remember that this video is a summary, so I'm not going to go through all of the possible perpetrators and leads, but we're going to look at 3 of them that have received a lot of media attention, and they are the 22-year-old, the Springlock man, and the purple guy. Let's start with the 22-year-old. The 22-year-old was a man by the name of Claude McGuire. He really hated Freddy's. He was a member of the Utah Rockies, an environmental organization that was very critical of Fazbear Entertainment. But on the other hand, he liked the type of Springlock suits Fazbear's was making. According to a witness, McGuire had said that he toured throughout Utah during the time of the rolling circus, and that he was trained by both MCM and Fazbear Entertainment in the mascot performance. It has since been revealed that he only did one free service during the 1979 fall celebration. According to people who knew him well, they described him as a bit of a mythomaniac, a liar, and that he fantasizes a lot. The tip about the so-called 22-year-old came to the police an hour after the murder. A woman told them that he had been at a diner called Sparky's on Airport Road at 7 p.m. the night of the murder. The man had, during the time he spent in the diner, talked out loud about his hatred of Freddy's. Several other people have also reportedly tipped the police about the same man, and they have also mentioned the 22-year-old's hatred towards Freddy's. On July 3rd, 1985, he was picked up by the police and taken in for questioning. He was released the same night, but 3 days later, he was brought in for questioning again, and now the police began to suspect him. He told the interrogator that he was at Sparky's the night of the murder. In the diner, he had spoken to 2 different women and also a man. After that, he had gone to Jackson's restaurant to see a show, and after the show, he went to McDonald's on Airport Road. The man he had spoken to at Sparky's told the police that McGuire left the diner between 7:20 and 7:50 p.m. The police also found traces on McGuire's pocket that indicated that he had recently lost blood, presumably after cutting himself. However, it's unclear if it was the same type of knife used in the incident. He was detained on July 13, 1985 for about 2 weeks before being released. There was no hard evidence, and in June 1987, the preliminary investigation was closed. And then we come to the Springlock man. The Springlock man was a man named Earl Patterson, who was well known by the police before. He was an alcoholic and a drug addict who was sentenced to a closed psychiatric ward in 1970 after committing a manslaughter. He had stabbed a man to death on Airport Road in Hurricane. He was declared healthy after a year and released. From there, he started working for Fazbear Entertainment among the Springlock suits. He was questioned by the police on September 25, 1985, 3 months after the murder of the children, who wondered where he was during the night of the murder on June 26th. According to Earl Patterson himself, he had left Freddy's to visit a bar on Oxford Street called Junior's. He arrived at the bar around 3:30 p.m. in the afternoon and left home at 7 p.m. He went to Central Bus Station before he took the car to Silver Reef. He arrived at his apartment at 8:10 and went to bed. In the morning, his boss called him, and that's how he learned about the incident. However, the police were very suspicious of Patterson, and about a year later, tips began pouring into the police that Earl Patterson resembled the composite sketch that the police had previously published. He was summoned for questioning several times, and on November 3rd, 1987, the witness and security guard at the time of the murder, Jeremy Fitzgerald, identified Earl Patterson as the perpetrator in a recorded witness confrontation. A witness confrontation is a measure that the police can take when investigating a crime and have a strong suspected perpetrator and want to investigate whether a witness can recognize the perpetrator or not. For instance, you can put several different people in a row, without saying which of them is the suspect of the police. Then it's up to the witness to identify the perpetrator. After Earl Patterson was identified by Jeremy as the man wearing the yellow mascot costume he saw on the security cameras that night, Earl was arrested, and in June of 1988, Earl Patterson was sentenced to life in prison for the disappearance of the 5 children. And there, the mystery of the children's murder was solved, for the time being at least. Patterson appealed the verdict to the Court of Appeal, and on October 1st, 1988, Earl was released on the grounds of weak evidence. It was revealed during the court that Jeremy had learned before the witness confrontation that the suspect was an alcoholic. Everyone in the witness confrontation was also a cop, except for Earl, of course. All the officers were wearing blue shirts, while Earl was wearing a plain shirt. Jeremy would have also said, "Yeah, it's evident who it is." Then there was the fact that there was no forensic evidence to show that Earl was even at the scene of the murder, and you couldn't prove that Earl had any motive for killing 5 children. And that brings us to the third perpetrator in this video, the purple guy. William Afton was a co-owner of Freddy's and an owner of another company within FNAF Entertainment. He had previously owned a Springlock Suit of the right type, and he lived near the restaurant where the murder scene took place. Afton was questioned on June 27, 1985, the day after the murder. His description of the night of the murder is as follows. He had left his work at the restaurant and was on his way home at 7:45 p.m. Once he began to walk out of the building, he heard a scream about 7 feet away. Then he sees that the door to the safe room is open, which it shouldn't be, and that there is blood on the floor. As he walks by, he sees more blood on the floor and that the safe room's fire exit has been opened. Police arrive at the scene and ask where the perpetrator has gone. Afton, who by this time had caught a glimpse of the murderer's suit as he escaped through the emergency exit, unhesitantly points with his whole hand towards the emergency exit and says, "That way." Then Afton thinks that he should have told them to check the security footage from the pizza place. So Afton contacts the police about the security cameras without getting in touch with them. The cops were busy, which is why Afton started to pack up his stuff from the scene. And he himself believes that the report filed in retrospect that they were looking for a man in a yellow mascot Springlock suit could apply to himself, because that's what he used to wear all the time during a previous sister location at FNAF Entertainment. According to Afton, he stayed at the crime scene for a while before he left for his other company nearby at about 8:20 p.m. He called his partner, had a cup of coffee, and then drove home. The thing that makes his statement a little suspicious is this. According to Jeremy, he had not seen Afton at the scene as he described it through the security cameras. According to the officers on the scene, they have no memory of Afton pointing to the emergency exit of the safe room, nor when Afton talked to the officers. And according to witnesses, no one even saw him at the crime scene. So what was he really doing in those minutes between 7:45 and 8:20? Many of Afton's friends and relatives describe him as a person with a great need for recognition. He exaggerated and often overstated his business plans. He'd spice up his stories a little bit to make himself look a little better than others. So could it be that Afton is trying to present himself as an important witness in this case, or could it be that he's trying to mislead the police? It was discussed in 1985 by members of the police investigation whether William Afton was a possible perpetrator, but he was sidelined and the suspicions against Afton was subsided as the police focused on other leads. 38 years later. The investigation on who killed the children is the largest police investigation in Utah's history, and even one of the greatest police investigations in the United States. Over 900 people have been involved in the investigation. 100 people have been questioned, many of them repeatedly. 224 different leads have been investigated. 197 different Springlock suits have been tested. 34 people have confessed to the murder, 7 of whom directly to the police. After 38 years, SLCPD finally had an answer to the question that had been on everyone's mind. On November 8th, 2023, the police and the prosecutor held a press conference where they introduced the person they suspected of murdering the missing children, and that was William Afton, the purple guy. And how did they come to the conclusion that William Afton was the killer of the children? It's based, among other things, on the fact that no witness remembers William Afton from the crime scene, how he owned a Springlock suit of the right type that he never managed to hand over to the police for testing, and that parts of his story about what happened on the night of the murder were highly improbable as well. However, no physical evidence was presented, such as DNA, especially since the bodies of the missing children have not yet been found, which could possibly carry traces of the killer's DNA. Nor was there any technical evidence against Afton, including footage from the security cameras, and no witnesses had pointed him out as the perpetrator. But even so, he was still suspected of killing the children. But they couldn't charge Afton anymore. Why? Well, because he himself disappeared without a trace 30 years earlier when he was 48 years old, and you can't prosecute a missing person. So the investigation was closed. The designation of William Afton as his child's murderer drew mixed criticism from all quarters, and conspiracy theories about the murder floods even to this day. The murder may remain a mystery to many. Whoever it was that pulled the spring locks inside the safe room that night, one thing is for sure. When the lock gave way to the person inside the suit, it changed Fasper's story forever. Leave a comment down below if you want to share your theories. Don't forget to share this video, like it, and if not even better, subscribe. But that's it from me. Thanks for listening.